Welcome, welcome, welcome. Just gonna wait out just a little longer to get folks to. Oh, Damaris is back. Just to get
Yeah,
folks to
sorry. I
start.
still got clicked out. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. We're glad to have you. We're just gonna wait for a few more folks to log in. How was everyone's Monday start to their week so far? You can feel free to take yourself off mute. It's okay if you want to.
What do we have? I was trying to find the invite.
Welcome, welcome. We are just waiting for a few more folks to join us. Thank you all for joining tonight's call. Yes, please let us know who is in the room. For our logging on, welcome, welcome, Linda. Welcome. And if you're just joining, we would like to just know where you are in California. Welcome, Gail. We have a message in the chat. You can just let us know where you're calling in from. Welcome, Jasmine.
This is Brian Coughlin with the San Diego Urban League from San Diego.
Oh, welcome, Brian.
I'm Linda from Pomona, California.
Hi, Linda. Welcome, welcome. And you can
Thank
also
you.
type in the chat if you don't want to come off mute. If it's starting, just a second. Welcome. Let's see who else do we have. Jasmine from Los Angeles. Oh, St. Louis, Missouri. Welcome.
All the way from St. Louis.
Yes. Welcome. It's glad to have everyone here. Welcome, Kim. Thank you for joining. Margaret, thank you so much for joining. All right. Well, I thank everyone. Carla. Okay, Carla from Gardena. Thank you for joining us, Carla. I would love to be respectful of everyone's time, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining our October Restful Resistance series, Power of Turnout Strategies for Voter Engagement. We have a nice conversation that is going to happen tonight with Dr. Flo and Kelly Todd Griffin. So please, please, please bring out your pen and pads in case you want to take some notes and pass it along. Thank you for joining. First order of business, I just want to make sure that today everyone knows that today is the last day to register to vote by mail. So
No,
if
online.
online,
Yes,
okay,
online.
okay, thank you,
Mhm.
thank you. So today is the last day to vote online. Be sure that if you have not, you go to register to vote.ca.gov to register so that we can make your vote count. That is truly important. Okay. So as we had earlier put in the chat, we just want to know who is in the room, who's joined us today. You can add your name, your city, and or state. If you are outside of California, that would be great. And my name, for those of you who do not know, is Karina Crump. I am Senior Program Manager with the California Black Women's Collective. I just want to welcome everyone today for joining. And again, just be sure that you have your pen and paper because we're going to have some great nuggets that comes out of today's conversation. So we are looking forward to exploring strategies for voter engagement. And this is just a quick agenda so that you understand what's going to happen on today's call. We will start with the welcome, and then we'll have our pour into your sister segment, and then we'll jump right into the fireside chat, which is called Beyond the Ballot, and that'll be moderated by Kelly Todd Griffin, our CEO and president. And then we are joined with Dr. Flojaune Cofer, and she also goes by Dr. Flo. And then we'll go and fall into Q&A, and we'll have a joy practice, some announcements at the end, and we will close. Okay, so for this session of Pour Into Your Sister, we're going to switch things up just a little bit. I am going to share a brief animated video called Resilience, Anticipate, Organize, and Adapt. This video defines resilience as not just enduring, but anticipating challenges, also organizing resources and support, and adapting to change. As we watch this video, there's just a few things that I would like for us all to think about. How do we prepare for challenges before they come? Reflect on how in your civic or community life you can build systems of rest, care, and support before burnout or chaos arrive. We also just want to think about what does it mean to organize collectively. Notice how communities in the video come together to respond and adapt. And think about what does this look like in Black women's leadership and local organizing spaces. Lastly, we want to think about how adaptation can be restful. And so we will reimagine adaptation not as frantic reaction, but as a mindful flexibility and leadership posture rooted in reflection and restoration. So I am just going to switch screens really quickly so that I can. Okay. I am going to come back here, and I would say that the thing that I really admire most about this video was the community building of it. It also made me think about what resilience really is, or what it really looks like. And in this video, you can see that resilience, it isn't just about surviving the storm. It's the ability to anticipate the storm, to organize for it, and to adapt once it hits. As we move forward, I'm just going to bring back up my presentation here. Let's see, share screen. As we move forward with our fireside conversation beyond the ballot, Dr. Flo, Kelly Todd Griffin, our president and CEO, will come up and introduce Dr. Flo, and as she will walk us through what it means to engage deeply and to lead courageously and to care for yourself and community along the way.
Hello. Am I up? Up? Am I up? Am I up? Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This evening on this Monday, this third Monday of October, I am so honored to bring in our phenomenal speaker, one of the ladies that I enjoy the most because she has a way with words and storytelling that is just a gift. Most folks can't even imagine telling the story. She just told us a story just before we got on, and it was like, oh, wow, that's so interesting. So I have known Dr. Flo for, I don't know, maybe about 7 years now. I had the honor of meeting Dr. Flo when I lived in Sacramento. Dr. Flo is a nationally trusted health educator, advocate. She drives policy change. She also is just a wonderful jewel in our community, particularly for those voices that aren't often heard. She is a public health professional, seasoned California policy expert, and advocates for pushing for Sacramento that protects our health and serves everyone. She was formerly the Senior Director of Policy for Public Health Advocates, where she directed a team leading health equity initiatives focused on state policy, prevention, response, and recovery from public health emergencies. She previously led the preconception health initiatives for the California Department of Public Health, working to ensure vital maternal health and reproductive coverage was included in the Affordable Care Act. She's deeply committed to civic engagement, having served in various capacities on local boards, committees, and commissions, including serving as the first chair of the Sacramento Measure U Advisory Committee. She's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She was raised by 2 public school teachers, moved to Sacramento over 20 years ago, and resides now in South Sacramento. Last year, she ran for mayor of Sacramento, and it was the first office she had ever ran for. And when I first talked to Flo, and I said, you should think about running, and she was like, oh, never. And she jumped in the race, and in the primary, she got more votes than anyone else. And then during the general election, there's all kinds of shenanigans going on. But here we have her today to talk to us really about what does it mean to get voters to turn out? Because I think some of the strategies that we've been using for years aren't hitting the same way that they used to hit. And so we wanted Dr. Flo to come on and chat with us about, what could we do differently, particularly to engage the younger generation. because oftentimes we think that one size fits all and what we know for sure. It doesn't. And we've learned that over and over again. And it just happens that we're about to go into a special election on November 4th. And many people are trying to figure out how do they engage with these voters to make sure they can get out to vote. So, Dr. Flo, welcome, 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 welcome.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay, yay, yay. So, okay, so I have a couple questions and I may, veer off because I know you. All right. So you spent several years connecting public health to civic life. From your perspective, what does beyond the ballot really mean, especially for those of us who want to engage in change but feel tired and overwhelmed?
Yeah, so I'm really glad to be here and happy to be having this conversation, in part because I think that is a common refrain, that people are tired, that people have, their own lives to live, and it feels like it's an entire second job to have to be politically engaged. And people are like, look, I do my civic duty, I vote every couple of years, and in special elections when it shows up. That's all I got, y'all. I don't have it to do, the Board of Supervisors meeting on this day and the City Council meeting on this day, and come up to the legislature on this day. It's just too much for me. And to that, I say, yes, that may not be your lane. And so the real beyond the ballot is finding our lane, right? Recognizing the adage that the personal is political. And so there are things that you already care about, lanes that you're already in, that you can turn into influence. Because the truth is that if we vote and then we're silent, and I'm saying this specifically because this is a group of Black women, our votes are taken for granted, right? It is assumed that we will always be the adult in the room, that we will gather and collect ourselves, and that we will show up in the ways we're supposed to, right? We have showed up from Alabama to California. We show up consistently. We vote in ways that not only benefit ourselves, but benefit everybody else around us. And that is something that we do consistently as a voting bloc. And so I sometimes joke and say, people will ask, like, do you all know each other? And I'm like, no, but we're connected by the Spirit, because we show up and we just know what to do. It's like the assignment is already built in. And so that does mean, though, that voting can't be where our engagement begins and ends, because we are taken for granted. It is expected that we are going to show up and do the right thing. And so what we need to do is engage more, because we need to ask for more. And so that looks like, what are you doing in your life? Are you a social worker who engages in child welfare? Then find the space, find the people who are doing child welfare work and engage there, right? In between the elections, push on them, have initiatives that you want to, things you want to see. Make sure that the people who represent you in that space know who you are. Are you a person who's really into technology? Are you one of the tech girlies? Then engage on that topic. Like, you don't have to go out and decide tomorrow, I'm not an economist, and tomorrow I should not be out here trying to advocate on behalf of I'm an epidemiologist, I'm a public health person. So that's my lane. So when it comes to that stuff, that's the place I should engage. But I just want to encourage every single one of us to engage outside of voting, because it's how we wield the power. It's how we make sure that the follow through happens, because they will sell us wolf tickets every single time an election comes along. It's, oh, I care so much about you. It's, hey, let me bring Beyonce on the stage. It's all of these things, right? It's the performance of, hey, I want your votes. And then the moment that the votes are tallied, now it's on to the next thing, and we are an afterthought. And when it comes time to appoint a Black woman to the Senate, when we lost the one we had, there are crickets. When it comes time to be able to show up and say, hey, you want to make sure that we have what we need, there are crickets. Hey, we need healthcare, there are crickets. And so we need to make sure that we're showing up in between. And I think that's what Beyond the Ballot is. It's saying, how do we mobilize and take our energy so that we're not forgotten in between elections, and that our votes and our dollars are something that we are wielding in a way that we actually have political influence. Because the truth is that the groups that change their mind sometimes, who are less loyal than we are, get a lot more attention, and there's a lot more catering to their whims, and that's power. And so I don't think we want to be fickle, but then we have to find other ways to be able to wield our influence so that people don't take us for granted.
Absolutely. It's interesting you say that. We've talked about that in the past around, where what is your lane? Like some people are organizers by nature. Some people can speak in front of thousands of people, are more extroverted than introverted. Some people do really well on one-on-one conversations. And in this way of engagement, no matter if it's for voting or it's to get something, some resources in your community, you kind of have to know where you want to be. Because if you don't have the passion, like I'm clearly a convener, like I love to convene people. Mm-hmm. That is my strength, right? I'll convene people and then we get to talking and chatting, and I'm a relationship and a connector and all that kind of stuff. But I even am tired, right? And you think about, you're asking me to not only get out to vote, you're also asking me to raise money. You're also asking me to then also walk precincts and all of that. And then when it's not voting, you're asking me to show up to make sure that what you feel is good for the community, not because you called to engage me, but to say, we got this coming down, and how can you help make sure that your folks as a master convener can get the people out to come and support what I decided that I thought was best on the ballot without even engaging anybody in the conversation. Right. And so when we talk about, rest as a form of resistance, so I feel like I've been resting to resist you. And that whole element of self-care is essential part of civic engagement and leadership. What are you doing around that? How are you making that become something that you have partaked in, especially after running such a long race? I mean, you didn't just start running 3 months before.
18.
Right. You ran 18 months before. You were like, hey, I'm running. And we didn't even know who was going to run on the other side. Right. And, so what does that look like to you?
It looks like a few things, right? I think just starting with burnout is not a requirement for us to be a part of spaces. And so we need to, the rise and grind culture, we need to do away with it. Because what it is doing is betraying our values, right? So, even if you're not a public health girly like me, like we all understand the value of our health. And so there's nothing more hypocritical than being out here talking about how we want to create healthy communities while we're digging ourselves an early grave. That is not the way to go. And, Kelly and I have this in common, that we have parents that we lost really early to preventable diseases, and heart disease on my case, diabetes on Kelly's case. And so, I think about that a lot, right? Especially as I creep closer to the 47 age that my dad died at. I'm like, I don't want to be out of here in a single digit number of years, right? So I'm trying to make sure that we take good care of ourselves. And that means making sure that we prioritize ourselves first. And I know that can be challenging, but it's all the things of making sure that, I try to make it so that when I first wake up in the morning, I get to have me time before I have to give anything to the world. My simple indulgences are getting a workout in, brewing my coffee, sitting and smelling some outdoor, air. And then I run myself a bath and put a bath bomb in. And I do this every morning. And I have a bath. That is my little time before the day starts. And it's important to me because it's a time to center myself. It's a time to remind myself that I am important and to hear my own thoughts. And I did that throughout the campaign because I just knew how important it was. I also went and got massages, and I did some of those things because I knew my body was under extra stress. I'm walking all of these extra miles, and I'm going to, working full time and then going and doing 3 and 4 events every evening. And, it was nonstop. And so I needed that time to make sure that I had some time where I was awake, not just sleeping, but also having some rest while I'm awake, because we are not machines. And so we have to live our values on that. We have to prioritize if it's important to us. There's the saying of give me your bank statement and your calendar, and I'll tell you what you actually value. It's where you spend your time and your money. So I had to make sure that mine were in alignment with what I say are my values, because otherwise, how am I gonna be pushing to change systems when I can't change the individual who looks in the mirror that I have complete autonomous control over? So for me, that's important, and that is the thing that the rest is resistance is like. No, you don't have to organize a group nap. You don't have to. It's about finding the things that you need for yourself,
right?
Doing those and doing them unapologetically, right? Like, put that time on your calendar, and when somebody goes to schedule a meeting, it's I'm unavailable. And I know we don't like no as a full sentence, but it is like I'm unavailable at that time. Could we meet another time, right? Not, oh, well, that block is movable, so I'll see what I can do. No, you're unavailable. You're not available. And sometimes it's helpful to be able to have, an accountability buddy who helps you as you're forming those habits if they're new for you. Sometimes it's even, helpful to create some sort of penalty if that's the way that it works for you. But whatever it is, like, we have to find ways to make sure that we're taking good care of ourselves and that we are stepping back when we need the moments, slowing down and shifting gears when we need that, because that is essential to our health and well-being. We are not machines, and we cannot compete with AI. So don't try.
It's so true. In this role, I have been more affirming of the no. Like, it's just no. Like, I don't give explanations. I just say nope and move on. If someone says, "Can we put this on the schedule?" Nope. Like, you already know these are my days off. I don't have to keep saying it. Mm-hmm. It's just a no. Let's keep moving. And it's interesting, we're doing our leadership training program. That's the other thing we've been telling our folks. Like, you don't have to add an explanation after your no. No, because no, just no. And keep moving. It is complete, but it's also intentional. Like, that is a muscle that we must build, of the intentionality of NO. Okay.
Screens are draining, Kelly. I mean, that's the other piece of this, right? Like, the other thing that I have started to be better about is putting my phone on airplane mode or leaving it behind when I go to do things. There was a time, I was a free range 80s kid. There was a time where I used to go outside and spend a whole day away from a telephone. And now I see people licking their lips and scratching their, like, we're addicts. Like, where's my phone? I can't be without it. We need to learn to be without those sometimes, and to put them on airplane mode, and to step away and to be unavailable. Just because someone texts you right now does not compel you to have to respond right this instant. Right. And so I think that there's also some boundaries with our technology that is creating the anxiety and the burnout that we have, because from the time we wake up in the morning, we are making so many more decisions than our brains are designed to have, and ingesting so much more information than our brains are designed to ingest. So I'm doing a 5-day at the beginning of the year from December 31st to January 5th, where no screens at all, no TVs, no phones. I'm gonna get outside. I'm gonna cook some things. I'm gonna let what's already in my brain have a chance to, like, some of those seeds to plant in some fertile ground, and have some space to dream, have some space to maybe even feel bored. Shocker, right? Like, when's the last time you waited for anything? Right. We don't, because the moment we're in line, we pull out our phone and start paying a bill, texting this person back. Like, we don't have those fundamental human experiences of just standing around and being bored anymore. Yeah. And there's something human about that, and something necessary. So we need to think about rest in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like leaving your phone in your car, because there's this notion that there's going to be an emergency while you're in there shopping, and you're just going to get milked. Like, the emergency is going to still be there. I put my phones on silent. And, I also recommend, like, you have to also decide on what part of that matters. Like, if you have a sick, I had my phones on silent, and my grandmother was ill. And so having the phones on silent, it was, at the time when they needed to get in touch with me, they called my son, who was downstairs. And I recognized at that point, like, there's other ways of getting in touch with me, even if I keep my phone on silent. Like, if I'm by myself, that's different. But if someone is with me, everybody who is important to me know to call my son, who's just downstairs, so he can come up and knock on my door. I don't necessarily need my phone to be pinging me, waking me up every morning.
Right.
And sometimes there's seasons where you have to do that. If you're working on a contract, you're working on something, but then go back to turn that phone off at night so that you're not being pinged for every Facebook that posts, every Twitter, every X, every Instagram, because your mind immediately wants to go and see, what did I miss? You know, it's that fear of being left out, right? It's that, it's like, oh my God, I don't want to miss something. And you're missing like a motivational thing or something, a prayer in the morning. The other thing that I do that's part of my morning routine while incorporating technology is before I even get out of my bed, I'll say, you know, Alexa, play me my daily devotion. And it'll play the daily devotion. And I just find that is just grounding for me. Just like it's so I don't have to grab my phone and look at my daily devotion, but actually just asking technology to do it for me. And so that's something that I've also incorporated. But let's change subjects and let's talk about community build. You know, this is obviously a nonpartisan conversation, but there's lessons to learn regardless of who ran and what ran. And in this case, it really doesn't matter. But one of the things that I always admired about you, you know, I would come to Sacramento for, you know, work and see your signs and see people, you know, walking, all manners of people walking. And I would say, I was like, hey, you know, there go Flo. And I would call you sometime and go, I see your signs. And I would try to get down there, but couldn't. But you mobilized, like you tapped into something that, you know, we don't see often, but we're starting to see more and more, which is this. It's not even whether you a Democrat or Republican anymore. It's, do you share the same values? And that is the trend that we're seeing in California, is that it's a value-based engagement, and that more young, particularly young people, are joining this decline to state or independent, like
no party preference. Yep.
No party preference.
Yep.
And it's engaging at that level. What lessons did you really learn about engaging people at that level where everybody was welcome? And to a sense, that's actually what the administration is doing. Even though it's really partisan, they're saying, I don't care who you are. I don't care your moral compass. I don't care about any of that. You're welcome here. So everyone that doesn't feel like they're locked into, you must believe this to come to this, it's such a wide range of what conservative means to them, versus, you know, you must believe in this and nothing else. But you really found, particularly at a local level, where it is a nonpartisan race, where you were able to harness that. And so tell us, like, what were you thinking? What were the lessons that you learned around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we learned a few lessons. I mean, the first is, you know, that old school community organizing works. And so what my campaign did, that was the first time this happened here, I know other places have done it, is that we had 97 house parties during my campaign. These were where people opened up their homes and said, hey, I will invite my friends and family so that they can meet you, and that we can also try to raise some money. But I want them to hear directly from you. I don't want them to just see your name on a flyer or a sign. I want them to hear directly from you. We also agreed to do, I think between the primary and the general election, we did something like 30 debates. Because again, we wanted people to be able to have a head-to-head comparison of like what's happening here. And then we also did, you know, I did like an Ask Me Anything on Reddit. My team thought I had lost my mind when I said we're just going to open up the floodgates and see what happens, and it was amazing. Like, people asked hard questions, but we really didn't get anybody like in there just kind of trolling. And I took, you know, a week and just made sure I was like, we're going to try to go through and answer every single question here to make sure that people understand, who I am and what I stand for and what this campaign is all about. The other thing is yeah, I had, 7 or 8 Democratic clubs that endorsed me, but I did not run as a Democrat. I ran as a person who believes in public health, who lives in this community like you do, who shares the same concerns, and who wants a bright future for myself and for those who live here. And we really tried our best to go about telling stories about the way the world is. So off top, I'm Black, I am a woman, I am the only woman in this race running against basically 4 men who have been elected officials in the Sacramento area and are well-known names. And so in the primary, the obvious attack on me was going to be, I'm the defund the police candidate, right? I'm the radical left, I'm, all of this. And so we just countered that message with, we have a budget that has gone up $100 million for our police department. Like, do you feel safe? Do you feel $100 million safer? And how much more money are we going to invest in this department when public safety starts with investing in jobs and schools and after school programs? And the truth is that, yes, we want somebody to respond when we call 911. But if you're calling 911, something already went wrong, whether a medical emergency or safety emergency, but that's not on anybody's bucket list for a good day. So I'm not saying here that I want nobody to show up when you call 911, but I want the right person to show up. If you need help with a medical emergency, I want an ambulance to show up, not 3 fire trucks and 2 police officers, none of whom have training in your medical emergency, right? And so what does it look like if we streamline these operations and invest some of these dollars in after school programs and summer programs so that our kids aren't bored for 3 months out of the year because we still operate on an agricultural school schedule? Like, what does it look like if we actually invest in some of the things that keep our community safe? And that resonated with people, and they got to hear it as a story, right? As the story of, look at this example and what we could have done differently. They got to hear, I say this a lot about the local level. At the national level, every day you wake up, and if you tune into the news, you feel like you were watching The Days of Our Lives, right? There's a cast of characters you've been introduced to, and every day you tune in to see what kind of tomfoolery they're up to, and who's mad at who, and who's beefing with who, and who's taking over who, right? But at the local level, we only tell these little S stories, right? It's like, this happened, the end. This happened, the end. But we don't set a cast of characters and tell these long range stories. And so people don't connect what they're seeing in their communities or what the options are with who's around them. And so we publicize for people that Sacramento went 2.5 years with no youth homicides because we invested in advanced peace and other programs. And then when the pandemic happened and everybody was like, look, all of the drivers of violence are going to go up, we should probably put some more money in this. We did the opposite. And we defunded our best safety programs. And even the police department said, we have no homicides because of this work that's being done. And this collaborative of people across the city who are doing this work and intervening and making sure that shootings don't happen, right? And so it was like, but people were living here. And I was like, what would I tell you if you lived in a city that just a few years ago had that? Why don't we anymore? And people were shocked, right? Because we don't tell the stories. And so that's really what our campaign was about. It was about connecting with people, about allowing them to have fun, and about telling the story of who we are and who we can be together.
Yeah. And I love advanced peace. I remember when it came up for vote, and it was the same conversation, right? Like, why would we invest in, former
criminals to not be
formerly incarcerated individuals to stop because it worked. It worked.
Do you want to be safer now?
Right. That was so fun. It was like, it worked though. It's like, it's demonstrated work. So now you have More is Possible Sacramento, and which came out of your campaign.
I was bullied into it, Kelly.
Okay. They voluntold you.
They voluntold me. I was like, thanks everybody for the campaign. It's been real. And then people were like knocking on my door. They were sending me text messages and emails. And they were like, this isn't over. When are we getting together? We built something here. This was fun. I made new friends. We started a book club with the volunteers. Like, what do you mean we are gone? And we did like a big volunteer training with over 100 people who spent 2 days deciding which teams they were going to work on and what tasks they were going to take on in the campaign. And so they were like, no, we're doing a thing here. What do you mean it's over? And I was like, okay, I guess it's not over. What are we going to do? And so that's how More is Possible got going. It was just like, let's keep this thing. And so now you'll see in the same logo style as my campaign sign, it now says it replaced my name, and it says more is possible for Sacramento, and people have them in their lawns around town and buttons that they wear everywhere. And it's become a thing. So we just kept it going because people were like, we built something here. And now we're mobilizing, that same network to support my then who's running for Congress and some local city council races. And we're just continuing that work because people were like, we got a budget to pass. We want to lower the voting age to 16 here in Sacramento. So let's get started on that. Like, we have some things we want to do, and we need to continue to work together in the same way to do that.
I love that. That's transformational. It's actually the same way the collective started. We got everybody together, and once it was over and we didn't get that appointment, everybody was calling going, so what's the next?
Right.
What's up next? We finally got Northern and Southern California together. What's next? And it was like, okay, we'll get on another call.
Yep.
And we just kept it moving. But that is how change happens, right? It's not prescriptive. It's not something that, you sit down and you write out this long-term plan. It really is responding to the needs of the communities that you're trying to serve. And speaking of that, Black women and being marginalized leaders, usually those, and we see it even more today than we've seen it in ever, which is that, we are trying to figure out how do we balance being bold in advocacy while protecting our peace and our personal safety.
Yeah, this has come up a lot, because I am, of course, incredibly worried that there's going to be escalating, violence. Obviously, this past summer, we saw the representatives, in the Midwest who she and her husband were killed, right? Others threatened. You've seen a lot of this happen. Even locally here in Sacramento, we had a few of our city council members, all women of color, be threatened by someone. And so that's incredibly scary. My half joke, half serious response to this one, because, my family was obviously very concerned about my safety. And I said, well, see, the thing is, half of Sacramento has my front door code. So that's my safety plan. It's like, you never know who's going to pop up here. And so you may try it, but you never know what big dude might be walking out of my house with some lawn signs or popping over here to help out with something. I was like that was my safety plan, was just like, you can either guard it up like Fort Knox or open it up to the mountains.
That's hilarious. She's like, I'm gonna have in and out people to protect me.
Yep, that was really it. Like, people, came by. There was the meeting happening in my backyard. I looked up one time and there was a barbecue happening on the side of my house. I was laying in the bed. I was like, this is a community house. One of my friends says that my house is the set of a sitcom because nobody ever seems to need to ring the doorbell. They just seem to walk in. But it was part of that, really, like, jokingly, that was part of my safety plan, was like, there is no routine to how I move and who moves here. So you can mess around, but you might find out. But bigger than that, right? Outside of like the individual, I think part of it is that we need to be thinking about the ways like at the meta level, right? The ways in which the rhetoric we have right now is fueling violence. And I don't think we talk nearly enough about that, about the like who we as a society are leaving behind. And I'm not saying that's Black women's labor, but it certainly is something that we need to, when our allies, because the other thing is we have a platform. And I think that there are allies who want to do work, right? Remember all those people doing the, like, who are the Black, authors I can read in 2020 and whatever else. Some of those people, it wasn't a fad. They've read and they're like waiting for some instruction. And so we need to give them the instruction of, like, your sons and your nephews, that's where this starts, right? Being able to address some of the burgeoning concerns around their disaffectedness, and because that's what we do, right? How we protect, women from sexualized violence is to have less dangerous, predators around, right? How we protect people from gun violence and other forms of violence is to have less violent people around. So who are the people who have the influence to be able to make that happen, and how do you notice and influence them? So that's the big picture. And then the small picture one is, some of the basics that we have to do when we're having events, which is like, The address is not shared except for the people who RSVP, right? One of the things that I always tell people is don't post your photos while you're at the event. Wait till you get home, because otherwise people now have a precise idea of where you are and what you're up to at this very moment. It's another phone thing, but it's not something that's necessary, right? Those are the kinds of things that I think we need to be incredibly mindful of, and also just making sure that, we do have a safety plan in place when we're going places. And it's sad that we have to do that, but we definitely need to be thinking about, are you in an open crowd? Who's monitoring, who's coming and going, and making sure that the scene is safe. And that's something that's not just for political figures, that's anytime you're going to a large crowded area, because we've already had over 50 school shootings this year, and several like this is just a thing, like outside of just political violence, we live in a violent country, and the violence is around us all the time. And so we need to have our heads on a swivel. Unfortunately, that's not paranoia or anxiety. That's just called due diligence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, which is really sad, because you can't move out of it.
Yes.
That's the difference today, because it can happen anywhere. As a first-time candidate, and you came within 0.5% of winning, what did you learn about leadership, courage, and community power?
Leadership, courage, and community power. Well, I learned that it is harder to lose by half a percentage point than it is to probably lose by 20. Because there's a part of you that's like, maybe we did everything we can. And there's another part of you that's like, if we had knocked 2 weeks earlier in this neighborhood, could it have made a difference? If we had, if we had, if only, right? So, but one of the things I've learned is that every opportunity has a cost and every loss has an opportunity. And we sometimes don't think about those things. We don't think about what we're giving up when we have an opportunity, right? It's just like, oh my gosh, this is such a great opportunity. And it's like, yeah, but it's going to cost you time or money or a sacrifice somewhere. And the same thing is true for a loss, right? I, work in public health, so I did not have the COVID experience that many people had, where they were at home with their families, baking bread and watching Tiger King on Netflix and attending verses, right? I was working like 18-hour days, and every time I got ready to take a break, because I know I needed one, something good / not good for me, but good for everybody else would happen. So I had planned this like 3-week vacation, and then the Friday before I was leaving, they were like, "We got a vaccine," and I was like, I went to my group chat with other epidemiologists, and I was like, is this a safe space for me to just yell, "No, you couldn't give me 2 more weeks"? I gotta spend my vacation, watching these hearings of the FDA and making sure I'm up to speed on what this is, because we're gonna be rolling out vaccines the day I get back. And I was just like, come on, right? So for me, the loss here was that, I left my job at the end of August so I could have 2 months to campaign. And then I got to just relax. And, I wasn't working. I didn't have anything I had to do. And I got this deep soul rest that I would not have had otherwise, right? I got to see who really was in my corner, no win or lose, right? And it was a lot of people. You never know that if you win, right? You never know who's really down for you and who's just along for the ride because they're hoping that you're going to win and maybe you do something, and who's genuinely hoping we're going to do something, but also really cares about you as a person and wants to build something with you. And so there is a real opportunity and loss. And I think that has been part of my leadership journey. I think the other part is recognizing that even without official titles give us access and they allow us to do certain things, but we also still have a voice and an influence. And especially given that this was the closest race in city history, there's still an influence on the current administration in terms of how they move. They are a lot quieter than any administration has been before this. And I think some of that is a little bit of lingering embarrassment that this 20-year incumbent was not supposed to lose to the little Black girl from South Sac. But there's also this people reach out and they want to know what you think, and they want to know where you're going to move, and they want to know what you're going to do next. And again, the opportunity of loss is not something that I had really thought about in my leadership journey in terms of, well, what are the politics of losing? And how do you mobilize like in a time where you didn't win, right? And it's not lost on me that Stacey Abrams had a very similar experience, and she's also my Spelman sister. And so here we are, these two Black women who went to Spelman, who served on student government, right? And who lost these high profile elections in our spaces, and had to figure out what are those politics of losing. So those are the things that like immediately stand out to me. It also reminds me that I'm not like a religious scholar, but I think a lot about the story, right, of Moses and how like Moses led people, but he did not get to the promised land. That was Caleb, right? And so I think about how you never know what role you are going to play in a story. You just have to play whatever, you have to take whatever opportunity you have and use it to the best of your ability. But you may be someone who helps to plant seeds that somebody else waters and somebody else, harvests the crops that grow from those seeds. And so I think a lot about that, the saying of, we drink deeply from wells we did not dig, and we also enjoy the shade of trees we did not plant. And may it ever be so, right? And so sometimes I think about like, I may never win an election. I may never run again, right? But if I do, I may never win an election. But what is the way that showing up in this space in this way, right? With my big earrings and my colorful clothing and all of that paves the way for somebody else to show up as themselves. And to be able to do that next leg of the journey. And so I'm gonna run my race as best I can. And, hopefully we have lots of opportunity to do lots of cool things, but I'm also I feel that, pardon the expression, but the fuck it 40s are here. And I feel very much like I'm okay with whatever role. I feel so content in my spirit about how we show up and the work that we do. And so I'm like, whatever the role is, I'm here for it. Behind the scenes, in front of the camera, behind the mic, in front of whatever it is, I'm here to play that role and be helpful wherever I can.
So interesting you say that, because I do believe that because of you is why Sacramento has its first Black woman city manager. I do believe that the seeds that you planted show the possibility of what can be done when Black women are not just at the table, but when they don't turn off our mics, right? Yep. That we bring in our bullhorn and we are able to share, because as you recall, we created, Build Black, and yep. There was a takeover of Build Black by the males in the community, and yep. didn't allow particularly young Black leaders, female leaders, to be at the table. And they were on that other side. And so here you have an opportunity to find a place and a space in a campaign that represents the things that are important to you. And so for that, I am so proud of you and so proud of everything that you did in that campaign. As I said, I would come up there and just watch and smile. Karina was with me one time when I came up. I saw your sign and I called you immediately. I was like, I have to call her, because I was just so proud of you as somebody who has been, your biggest cheerleader, and feel like you have so much to offer the world. And you definitely have so much to offer us as our foundation for moving forward to ensure that everybody's voice is heard. So I just want to personally thank you. I know that we have a lot of work ahead of us, and I'm so glad that you'll be, our warrior, pushing us through, making sure that there's a pathway for us all. I'll follow you anywhere. Whether you are on the ground or on the balcony, I will follow you anywhere. So thank you, beautiful one.
And I will say, on that note, I used to have these conversations with our former mayor, Daryl Steinberg, all the time. And he would always say to me, Flo, Sacramento is not as progressive as you are. And I would say, that very well may be true, but it's not as conservative as you think it is. And so the one win, I think the narrative change part of this and your question about what about community power is that We showed people that the thing that I had been saying for forever, which is I think Sacramento is as progressive as its choices. This was the first time, you had a candidate running a citywide campaign that didn't take corporate money, that talked openly about Gaza, that talked openly about, our community values, that talked openly about how we could do things differently. And we came within 0.5 percentage point of winning, right? Won the primary outright. And then, came within 0.5 percentage of winning the general. Like, that was the first time on the first shot. Look what happened and look how much changed. And I think that was the community power. It was like, we have been as progressive as our options were. And when, you can't say who people are until you give people a full range of options and really see what they want. And I think that this showed people something different. And the reason why I said earlier that like losing by this small percentage is such a hard thing, because, we had to build from the ground up the name ID. So there were several people who we knocked doors later in October, and there was one older woman. She's in East Sacramento, which is, if you don't know Sacramento, it's a more conservative area. And she said, I'm sorry to tell you, I got my ballot early. I didn't know you. I knew the name McCarty, and so I voted for him. And then I watched the debate a couple of days ago. And honestly, I regret my vote. I did not vote for the right person. And those are the ones that stick with you, because I'm like, you happen to answer the door. Are there 900 more of you? Because this election could have been different. But it also, like, it says something to me, right? Like, even though the election didn't turn out the way we wanted, like, there are people here who paid attention, who are now engaged, and who did want something different, and didn't know, weren't paying attention, didn't know it was happening, didn't know, like, knew this name, right? All of these reasons, like, voters are not always people who read 40 pages of text and have been paying attention for 18 months. Some of them tune in at the last minute, right? And so it just reminds me that there's so much more possible when we work together, and when we build and give people options.
Absolutely. I just can't wait to see what's next, because I know there's something next. All right, Miss Karina, what's next for us? Questions?
Yes, we did get a question that came in, and I just want to let you know that the comments have just been amazing about you and this presentation. I will say that I share Kelly's sentiments, the voters that wish she voted for you sentiments of just how great you are. I've been enjoying this conversation. So let's see. Carla Brown said, Dr. Cofer, what are your thoughts, or rather a few suggestions, on how to engage and encourage young people aged 20 to 25 to vote? Thinking of inviting some of my daughter's friends over to chat about why voting is important starting this year, starting now.
Yes. And I also, Carla, saw your message about being 16 and getting to college and being really upset you couldn't vote. I will briefly tell you my story before I answer your question, which is that I started college in 2000, which was the famous Gore versus Bush election. And I remember being on Spelman's campus, and this woman asked me, did you vote? And I said no, and I didn't get to finish my statement, and she like reamed me out for like a full 90 seconds about how important this is, and our ancestors died for this right. And I was like, I'm 17. I don't turn 18 until after the election. I'm not allowed to vote. And she was like, oh, and then walked away. But I had to watch with like I was biting my nails, right? I was so invested in this election and was just so disappointed in the outcome. And so I share, Carla, with you that same sentiment of like, I really wish I could have voted. And I think lowering the voting age to 16 is really important for a number of reasons. Most importantly, that if you are 16 and you have a job, you are paying the same taxes as everybody else. You're also eligible for 11 different licenses. But I also think it's a way to get young people engaged in the local level. And so, Carla, your question about how do you get those 20 to 25-year-olds engaged? We have 75,000 people ages 18 to 30 in Sacramento who are eligible to vote but are not registered. And so I'm currently working with an organization that's really trying to change that. And one of the ways, again, is storytelling, because I think the national electorate captures so much of our imagination, right? It feels so far away from us, but it's what dominates the news cycle, is what's happening every day at the national level, especially now. And it's very easy to feel like your vote doesn't matter at that level. and electoral college and other things, like it is watered down, right? It still matters, but it's certainly watered down. So what I always try to do is share with people the examples of local elections, right? Now I have my own to add to it, but I would talk about the county supervisor race that was decided by 344 votes. Now I can say my own race, which was decided by 969 votes. I could talk about my friend Katie's race, which a city council race, which was decided by 116 votes. And when I say that, and I volunteer a couple days a week at a high school, when I say that to high school students, what they say to me is, I have more social media followers than the margins of these races. And I say, exactly. Right. So I think that's one way, is to remind people of how much influence you have, so much influence in swaying the outcome of a local election, much more than you do a presidential election, especially living in California. Let's just keep it real. But the other thing that I remind them is, do we all think slavery should be abolished? Because that was on your ballot here in California. Do we think the death penalty should be abolished? Because that's been on your ballot. Do you like though we also have direct democracy in California in local measures and statewide propositions. And if you feel like all the people on your ballot are corrupt and you don't trust any of the politicians, by all means, I understand it. But you trust yourself, don't you? So at least make sure you pick up your ballot and vote for the propositions and the measures, because again, you are the decision maker and your vote decides whether this passes or doesn't. Do you want rent control? Do you want, investments in our future in terms of, environmental protections? Like all of those things have been on our ballots to vote on. And so I think it's not just a matter of browbeating kids with like, this is important and your ancestors died for it. That, tell them the history for sure, but also make it relevant. Like you actually have power here and there are major things that you care about that are on your ballot. So make sure that you don't abdicate that responsibility and relinquish that, because somebody's going to show up to vote. And they may not vote the way you wanted them to, and then you're stuck living with their consequences.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just wanted to ask, we later on in the presentation, we talk about cultural competence. And you just going back onto Carla's question about how engaging that generation, besides, as you mentioned earlier, on getting a celebrity to participate, do you have any other tactics or any other principles that you would recommend for engaging that age group?
And I'm going back jokingly about trotting out Beyonce. It's just like sometimes
no, we love Beyonce.
We love Beyonce. like that was not a dig at Beyonce or anything.
No.
So just like the way in which we get pandered to during the election cycle and then completely forgotten afterwards. And people will tell you that they're going to come by and bathe your mama in the waters of Lake Minnetonka during the election. And then their new phone, who dis, 2 days after the election results are certified. And so that's more so what that point was. But I do think being where people are, using the influence that people have and taking advantage. There are not just these huge influencers at the national level, but there also are people who have influence in their own communities, right? The person who at the school, has a ton of followers, right? The person, in your community who hosts all the poetry nights and can gather a crowd, right? Those are the places where you also want to engage them because they have an audience. And so they have the ability to be able to draw people in and they're already trusted. And so I think that's also another important part of how we engage people, is recognizing that like you find the entry point, you connect with something they already care about, and then, share additional information. So show up to the music venues and show up to the art spaces and show up to the places where people are and engage them there. And that's what our campaign really did. We showed up to everything we could. Sunday night at the Torch Club, we were there. But we were outside on Saturday night during Pride, making sure we were handing out, information and condoms. Like we were just like outside trying to connect with people where they were.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am just going to read this last comment before we move on, because I think it's a beautiful message. It says, Dr. Flo, you shifted the conversation in Sacramento. Similar to Bernie Sanders' run for president. Even though he didn't win, he forced Biden to discuss and act on student loan forgiveness. Even though you didn't win, the issues you championed are front of mind for all of us, and McCarty has to address them. Thank you for your vision, your strength, and your leadership.
Oh, Enkarika, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Well, but thank you, Dr. Flo, so much for your time today, for talking through your journey, talking through your experience, providing some voter engagement strategies for us. We really do appreciate you, and you would not be a stranger to these conversations and to these spaces. So we look forward to having you again. And I am just going to shift slightly to the next part of our presentation. But thank you so much, Dr. Flo. We truly appreciate
Thank you.
All right. So we've gone through the Q&A. So I am going to be sure that this deck is available for you to have, also this recording. What the next step next phase of this call is, we wanted to just go through some best practices, tools, and resources for voter engagement. And I'm just going to touch on a few, and then again, we will share this deck, and I will also share the recording. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And Dr. Flo, if you are still here, if you can just let people know in the chat how they can reach you, in case they want to follow up, I think that would be great for everyone to have. Did I go too far? Okay. So some guiding principles: trust is fundamental. People act when they trust the messenger, built through consistency and authenticity. I would say, as Dr. Flo spoke on, cultural competency, people meet people where they are with the messages that reflect their realities. We want to be sure that we remove barriers and provide support. I think that's huge. Make participation possible, address transport, childcare, and accessible needs. Language of power, use affirming language, reminding communities that they own their voice and their vote. Some tactical best practices: mapping and segmentation. Identifying key neighborhoods. Dr. Flo also spoke up on this, and audience groups to focus on outreach where it matters the most. Phone, text, banking with local voices. Again, going back to that trust, using trust, familiar messaging, people who sound like and know the community is going to be very important. Also, door-to-door canvassing. Personal face-to-face contact builds trust and motivates turnout more effectively than the digital alone. Doing some community events and tabling. Meeting people where they are, I feel like, is a crucial point with voter engagement. You might have to go 5 steps in order for them to come 2. And let's see, civic education and issue framing. Break down complex issues into relatable language, connect policies to everyday life. Kelly is always telling us you have to do it on a 5th grade reading level so that it is clear and precise and people understand what you're saying. Social media and digital outreach. Use storytelling, short videos, and call to action across platforms where audience already engaged. We talked about transportation and voting assistance. Help remove those barriers to get people there, to get people at those voting sites. Check your voter status. We did this on the last call. You can always go to the Secretary of State's website where you can check your status, just making sure that you are up to date, that all of your information is up to date, and that you know where to go to cast your ballot. Localized, culturally resonant, messaging, using language, tone, and imagery that reflects the community's lived experiences. Counter misinformation. That is a big one. Share facts early, repeat them often, and correct gently but firmly to misinformation. Engage non-voter segments. That's a huge one. Reach those who feel unseen or disconnected. Meet their curiosity with care and not judgment. Reminder, cadence, and multi-touch. Follow up multiple times across different channels and consistency. and that will build turnout. Legal and compliance, knowing California rules for special elections. That is a huge one. Staying current on all state deadlines, eligibility, and election laws. Accessibility and inclusiveness, ensuring all outreach and events meet ADA standards and language access requirements. Data privacy and compliance. Protect personal information, follow all data collection and storage guidelines. Volunteer training and quality control, another huge one. Make sure that we are equipping our volunteers with accurate scripts, nonpartisan language, and clear protocols. Contingency planning, prepare backup plans for technology, staffing, or day of logistics to maintain integrity and trust. Get out the vote, GOTV. Voting with me, bring a neighbor. Encourage personal invitations. People vote when someone they know asks them to. Block level mobilization. Activate local champions to organize on their own blocks or apartment buildings. Polling site preferences and greeters. Create welcoming, visible support and polling sites to ease confusion and celebrate participation. And then follow up and reactivation. Reconnect after election day, thank voters, re-engage inactive ones, and keep momentum alive. And then really quickly, common pitfalls to avoid: generic one-size-fits-all messaging. Avoid this as much as possible. Tailoring messages in the community's voice and values, last-minute parachute campaigns. Don't drop in right before election day. Build trust early and stay consistent. Ignoring community dynamics. Understanding local history, relationships, and tensions before engaging. Overextending volunteers. Protect your people. Burnout kills momentum. That's why we have these calls, because we want everyone to be sure to prevent burnout. And schedule rest and rotation. As Dr. Flo mentioned on her call, I love that bath time before she starts that day. What a relaxing day, a way to start your day off, bringing peace into this space. And not budgeting for contingencies. Always plan for unexpected calls. Always, 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 like tech, printing, and transportation. And then no follow through after election. Engagement doesn't end at the polls. Think, debrief, and sustain relationships year around. And then these are some partner organizations that are doing the work. There's broken down by categories of youth. I know we had on our call, there was a question last time: how do we engage Black men? Black Women Wellness has a program, Power 25, where they're trying to get to 25,000 Black men. That is a powerful number. So if you have any Black men that you are trying to engage, this would be a great organization. And then here are some general partners as well, partner organizations as well that you can participate with. And again, we will share this deck with you so that you have this resource available. Okay, so now we are at our joy practice. We also always like to end these moments with just a little bit of joy. And this question, for this session, my roots, my rise. Think of someone whose love or legacy anchors you. This person reminds you of your worth and your resilience. You can either take yourself off mute to answer this question, or you can just type it in the chat. I want to see if some more questions came in. Thinking of someone whose love or legacy anchors you. Does anyone want to volunteer to speak about this or answer this question? Well, I will go ahead and just volunteer. I would say that someone whose love anchors me I have two people, and they're younger than me, which is my goddaughter and my little cousin. These two people remind me, of my worth and resilience. They are always calling, checking on me, being the adult, being the adult of us. Let's see. CJ Beauty said, my ancestors and myself. Thank you. Linda said, my mama, Mary Emma Jean Stewart. I love that. Thank you so much. Let's see, Carla said, Kevin Brown, legacy. He was a community organizer. My daughters anchor me. Tanya, my great grandma, oh, beautiful, who passed when I was 10 years old. She was my nurturer along with my daddy. Amazing. Thank you all. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you, Dr. Flo, for continuously dropping these gems in today's conversation. So yes, thank you all for sharing that. We want to just, the affirmation from this joy practice is just saying their name out loud and that you stand on their shoulders, and that you're rooted in joy. That can be an affirmation that you practice in the daily in the mornings. As Kelly mentioned, her ritual, and Dr. Flo, her ritual of what grounds them in the morning. So we've made it to announcements. Joy is my middle name. Beautiful. I love that, CJ. Thank you for sharing that. It's a great name. As we mentioned at the head of this call, and Dr. Flo also put in the chat, so last day to register to vote online. And then Dr. Flo had said, if you're in California, you can still register and vote until Election Day. You just have to go to an election center to do so. So I hope that that clears up any questions that anyone has. And then please join our Restful Resistance community WhatsApp chat. We put updates there. We also put affirmations, community events, and more. If you are part of the chat, you've seen that we've sent out a few events over the past 3 weeks since we've last met. That are some grounding events. Kelly Todd Griffin, she had a few events that they discussed Prop 50. And I always just like to squeeze in just a little bit of reminders that rest is important and how you do it, and just provide some suggestive ways to keep you all in that mindset of, yes, rest is resistance. So please scan the QR code to join our WhatsApp chat. And then become a member. We have a membership that you can join, and you will get even more further updates. Oh, thank you, Dr. Flo, for joining. So yes, we have a membership where you can come for professional development opportunities, exclusive resources that foster your personal and collective impact. And it is growing to be a very huge sister circle. So we do all want you to be a part of that experience. And again, you scan this QR code, and I can also put the links in the follow-up message. Yes, I will do that, Jasmine. And then thank you for joining us. And if there are any other questions, you can feel free to ask them in the chat, because Jasmine, I'm going to go ahead and pull that link for you so that you can have it. But if you don't have any other questions, thank you so much. I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful evening. And we meet here every third Monday of the month. I believe November 17th is the next session. So please always tell a friend and invite them so that we can continue to build community together. Thank you, Carla. Let's see, I'm getting that link for you right now, Jasmine. So sorry I didn't have it available. Should I follow it?
By any chance, is it in the link in the bio?
It is not, but thank you for making that recommendation, because I will definitely put it there as well. That's a great recommendation. Thank you. Okay, here it is. It's coming. Okay, here we go. Thank you all for your patience. I will be better prepared next time. Okay. All right, there it is. It is in the chat, and I will be sure to add that in the follow-up communications as well. Amazing. You're welcome, Jasmine. All right, have a great evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Flo. You've been amazing.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Yes, you made it wonderful.
I
Thank you
changed my
so much.
membership and signed up for the WhatsApp chat, so I'm in.
All right, that's what we love.
All right, enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.